Hi, everyone. Thanks for joining us at Marvin Frank. This is part two of the Gabby Petito update. I'm sorry this is late. This round of migraines has been kicking my butt, and even though I hope to do this on a live stream, I'm going to do this in a dark room, video recording only. So, this past week, in part one, we talked about the court case of Gabby Petito's parents suing the Laundries. The Laundries refuse to acknowledge the Petitos and the Schmidts in any way. They did not show up to court. They don't expect anybody to show up for court when they're trying to go against Brian's will or any money that he has left. So shortly after that trial took place to dismiss the case, I shouldn't call it a trial because it's not a trial yet. It was just brought in front of the judge by both sides to dismiss the case. And the judge is going to decide if there's any factors that make any of this outrageous to where the Laundries could be held liable for Brian's actions. And this is due to the fact that Gabby Petito's mom and dad are stating that they knew that Brian killed Gabby and that they tried to help him. They were willing to help him flee the country. They refused to talk to them and let the Schmitz and Petito family know where Gabby was or if she was alive. Well, shortly, and I mean very shortly, after that wrapped up in front of the judge, the Laundry's attorney, Bertolino, released Brian's final note in his notebook to Gabby. And you'll see the first page here. It's all on this very small printed page. There's multiple pages of it. But I'm going to read it to you here so that you know what it says. It says, Gabby, I wish I was right at your side. I wish I could be talking to you right now. I'd be going through every memory we've made, getting even more excited for the future. I can't live without you. I've lost every day we could have spent together, every holiday. I'll never get to play with someone again, never go hiking with TJ. I loved you more than anything. I can't bear to look at our photos, to recall great times, because it is why I cannot go on. When I close my eyes, I will think of laying on the roof of the van, falling asleep to the sight of the meteor shower at the Crystal Geyser. I will always love you. If you were reading Gab's journal, looking at the photos from our life together, flipping through old cards, you wouldn't want to live a day without her. Knowing that every day you'll wake up without her, you wouldn't want to wake up. I'm so sorry to everyone this will affect. Gabby was the love of my life, but I know adored by many. I'm so very sorry to her family because I love them. I'd consider her younger siblings my best of friends. I am sorry to my family. This is a shock to them as well as a terrible grief. They loved as much, if not more than me. A new daughter to my mother, an aunt to my nephews. Please don't make this harder for them. This occurred as an unexpected tragedy. Rushing back to our car, trying to cross the streams of Spread Creek before it got too dark to see, too cold. I hear a splash and a scream. I could barely see. I couldn't find her for a moment. Shouted her name. I found her breathing heavily, gasping my name. She was freezing cold. We had just come from the blazing hot national parks in Utah. The temperature had dropped to freezing, and she was soaking wet. I carried her as far as I could down the stream towards the car, stumbling, exhausted, and shocked. When my knees buckled and knew I couldn't safely carry her, I started a fire and spooned her as close to the heat. She was so thin, had already been freezing too long. I couldn't at that time realize that I should have started a fire first, but I wanted her out of the cold back to the car. From where I started the fire, I had no idea how far the car might be. Only knew it was across the creek. When I pulled Gabby out of the water, she couldn't tell me what hurt. She had a small bump on her forehead that eventually got larger. Her feet hurt, her wrist hurt, but she was freezing, shaking violently. While carrying her, she was continually made sounds of pain. Laying next to her, she said little rasping between violent shakes, gasping in pain, begging for an end to her pain. She would fall asleep, and I would shake her awake, fearing she shouldn't close her eyes if she had a concussion. She would wake in pain, start the whole painful cycle again, while furious that I was the one waking her. She wouldn't let me try to cross the creek. The like me that this fire would go out in her sleep, and she'd freeze. I don't know the extent of Gabby's injuries, only that she was in extreme pain. I ended her life. I thought it was merciful, that it is what she wanted. But I see now all the mistakes I made. I panicked. I was in shock. But from the moment I decided, took away her pain, I knew I couldn't go on without her. I rushed home to spend any time I had left with my family. I wanted to drive north and let James or TJ kill me, but I wouldn't want them to spend time in jail over my mistake, even though I'm sure they would have liked to. I am ending my life not because of fear I'm not ending my life not because of a fear of punishment, but rather because I can't stand to live another day without her. I've lost out whole future together, every moment we could have cherished. I'm sorry for everyone's loss. Please do not make life harder for my family. They lost a son and a daughter, the most wonderful girl in the world. Gabby, I'm sorry. I have killed myself by this creek in the hopes that animals may tear me apart, that it may make some of her family happy. Please pick up all of my things. Gabby hated people who littered. So it's interesting to know that his side of the story is that she fell and hurt herself and was in so much pain, and he couldn't take it, so he had to end her life. Now, if I'm remembering this correctly, the area where she was found was not that far from where the van was. So he could have gotten her help. If this was an accident and she fell, he could have gotten her help and saved her. Now I'm going to play a video that I found. WFLA News Channel 8. This is JB Biono. And he talks to the Petito's lawyer. And this lawyer gives some pretty good information, stating that the Laundry's attorney released this in hopes to create sympathy for the Laundrys and for Brian. But there's a twist to the story, and he'll explain that in here. I'm going to play it for you now.
Stephen Bertolino has made it clear that he is not going to be commenting in the aftermath of this, but that doesn't mean that the other side doesn't want to have their story heard. And so what I'd like to do, I'm going to hold up my phone here to the microphone. Joining us now on WFLA Now is attorney Pat Riley. Pat, you're live across all platforms, just so you're aware.
All right. Hi, JB.
Hi there, Pat. Pat, of course, who folks saw in court during the pretrial hearing in Sarasota County Court a couple of days ago. Pat, you contacted me, and I'll give you just the kind of floor and to say what you'd like to say in the aftermath of this.
Yeah, as I had said to you earlier, I was kind of shocked that this was released within about a half an hour after we left the FBI office up in Tampa. And I find it ironic that Mr. Bertolino says he wants, in full transparency, was releasing this. Well, someone should ask him why he doesn't release the entire notebook, but more importantly, ask him why he doesn't release Roberta Laundry's letter to her son.
What do you want? Want a job that I don't hate? Want to do something that matters?
A letter to her son. So Roberta authored a letter to her son. Can you explain more of what you're referencing here? Because this is news to us.
Well, the letter has, Mr. Bertolino has the letter. I don't have a copy of the letter, but the letter appears to be written to Brian after Gabby was killed. And there's some pretty extreme things that she said in there that, without having a letter here to quote it, I don't want to say, but I will simply tell you that there's some pretty extreme things that were contained within that letter.
When was this letter authored by Roberta Laundry, and where is the whereabouts of it now? What can you tell us about it from those questions?
The letter is undated, so it's uncertain when it was written, but certainly based upon what's contained within the letter, it would appear as though the letter were written after Gabby was killed and before Brian took his life. And the letter is currently in the possession of Mr. Bertolino.
Was that one of the items?
I will tell you, by the way, that on the envelope that contained the letter, the words "burn after you read this" were written.
And who authored those words? I'm just trying to be as precise as I can.
Roberta Laundry.
And again, that was written and that was delivered to whom?
Brian.
And was this one of the items that was retrieved today from the FBI, Tampa? And
yes.
And is this, you have alluded to me in multiple phone calls, Pat, about evidence that you have to back up the allegations that you have made in the civil lawsuit. Is this one of the pieces of evidence that you've been alluding to for so long?
Absolutely.
And where does the letter fit into as far as this story that we are now learning of, with Brian's words, his final words as revealed in the notebook? Where does the letter fit in relation to the story in the notebook?
I don't know that the letter necessarily fits in with the story of what's in the notebook. I'm simply responding to Mr. Bertolino suggesting that he's trying to be transparent, but he's picking and choosing what he wants to be transparent about.
So this is now you believe, of course, that this was released by Stephen, or I don't want to put words in your mouth. Do you believe that this was released by Stephen Bertolino as a chess move in the civil lawsuit?
I candidly don't know why it was released by Mr. Bertolino. That was a question that I've been pondering since it was released. I don't know if it was released in an effort to try to find some kind of sympathy for Brian because of what's contained in there. I don't see that. If he's trying to garner sympathy, I don't think that's going to work because it's an admission that he killed her. And even more so, if this was the woman he loved and there's supposed to be some sympathy, he left her body there and told no one where she was, or at least not my clients where she was.
One more time, the cover of the envelope, according to you, did you see this envelope today at FBI Tampa?
I did.
And again, it said what?
Words to the word, and this may not be the exact words, but it was "burn after you read this."
And it was a letter that Roberta was giving to Brian.
Yes.
And so, burn after you read this. Why would in your words, why would a mother deliver that letter to her son? This is a family that was on vacation together after returning after Brian returned home. Can you provide some clarity as to why Roberta would say that to her son and do so in the form of a letter? I mean, they're communicating, I'm sure. I mean, Brian returned home to Northport. He's returning back and living under the same roof as his mother and father. So then why would this letter exist?
I don't know if that letter was written before or after he came back to Northport, but there was the most I want to say is that there was an offer to assist Brian with some things in that letter.
An offer to assist Brian with some things in that letter. You have alluded to, Pat, and it's written in black and white in the lawsuit. You have made the claim that Chris and Roberta Laundry attempted to help their son Brian flee the country. Is that a part of this letter, this note?
No, that's not a part of the note. Not to my recollection, no.
Because we're now getting some different. I'm just trying to figure out exactly where this factors in and where this fits in, because we have the allegation, the civil lawsuit, that they were trying to help him get out of the country, but now this burn envelope letter is part of the equation. So I'm just trying to figure out exactly where this all fits in chronologically and how it fits into the relationship that existed between Brian and his mother.
I guess the most I can say, because again, it was undated, and so I'm guessing when the letter was actually written. Again, I'm fairly certain it was between the time period of Gabby's passing and then Brian committing suicide. So I don't know the exact date it was written. I don't know when it was delivered, but it was found on Brian, or actually it was found in the van when he came back. So I'm led to believe that he had that, he received that before he came back to Northport, but I don't know that for certain.
Oh, so the letter was found in the van?
Yes.
Okay.
Well, I'm sorry. No, the letter was found in the Laundry's home, but it had been taken out of the van.
Gotcha. Okay. So now according to Pat Riley, of course, who we're on the phone with here on WFLA now, there's this the presence of this letter that exists. Pat, did you read the letter today while you were with FBI Tampa?
I did.
What can you tell us about it other than what it said on the cover of the envelope?
I can tell you that the letter contained an offer from Roberta Laundry to assist Brian Laundry.
And you won't tell us what?
I prefer not to say exactly what it said until I have the letter in front of me, or you have the letter in front of you and you can see exactly what it says.
To assist Brian in something, but again, this was found and was taken from the van, but found in the Laundry home. So it's likely dated at some point before Brian returned home to Northport, or at least in that time window. So you're alluding to, and you're not telling us what it is, but you are alluding to Brian being offered help by his mother Roberta to do something that we're not being told what that is at this time.
Correct.
Okay. Your reaction to this story that Brian left behind. I'm sure by now, of course, you have read the 8 pages of the notebook. I'm sure by now that you and your clients have had an opportunity to at least process it. What do you make of Brian Laundry's story that it was that he heard a splash, a scream, that she was cold, and that he was told by her not to leave her side and to stay by the fire? And this story that has been presented by Brian and his final words to the world, what do you and your clients make of this story?
That's a version. There's another version. I don't have a copy of the other version yet, but I've been advised there's another version that he authored that we will be getting, hopefully through the Freedom of Information request, that does not entirely match up this particular version.
So you're saying that there is a second note of confession?
Yes.
And is it a written note of confession, or is it another different form of a confession?
All right, so we get a bit of information there. The fact that there was this letter written in a notebook, handwritten. You can see the watermarks. I don't know if this is in order, but this is some of the other pages from that notebook. And what we were told last is there's another version to this letter, but it's on an electrical device, and it does not match this handwritten letter. So first of all, I want to know what doesn't match in this handwritten letter that is on the electrical version of it, electronic version of it. Secondly, we learned that Roberta Laundry sent Brian a letter after he killed Gabby Petito and before he killed himself. And it was found in the van by the Laundries and taken into the house. And at that time, it was found by law enforcement. And on the cover of it, it said burn after reading or something to that effect. And it was Roberta was offering to do some things for Brian. So I'm curious to see what those things are that she offered. Because in here, it says they know that they offered to get him out of the country. So that must be in some other documentation than what the lawyer is talking about in this video. Going back to this letter that Brian hand wrote. We know that Gabby Petito died of strangulation, manual strangulation. But if she had all these injuries and was in that much pain, why didn't the coroner state that she had these other injuries? What are they trying to hide? Or is this how they're going to debunk this letter stating that, yeah, she was strangled, but she didn't have any other injuries to cause this pain? So now that these documents are starting to come out, I think more is going to start to come out, especially if the judge decides to take the Petito and Schmidt case to trial, to hold the Laundries accountable for knowing that their son killed Gabby and did not say a word to anyone and let the parents suffer. So as I said, sounds like there's more out there. I never thought that we would get more information, that they would keep it quiet between the Laundries not wanting anybody to know and the Petito Schmidt families not being able to tell because they were in a gag order or something like that, that was arranged when they all met to see what personal items Brian had and things like that. So now I know more information's coming out. I'm curious to see what else is going to come out. Are they going to actually reveal the whole autopsy? What injuries she had? We know that she was strangled, but, was there injuries to her ankles and her wrists? And how big was the bump on her head? Things like that. And then I want to see the electronic version of this note to see what is different. And in what way has his story changed, if it has. So the judge is supposed to come out with a decision in about 2 weeks, he said. So we're like a weekend. So we have about another week to go. We'll have to wait and see what happens with that. And then we'll have to see what other information is going to come out through FOIA requests by the Schmidt and Petito lawyer, or what's going to come out if this does go to trial. So we shall see. So this will be a continuing story. Thank you, everyone, for joining me tonight. Sorry it couldn't be done through live, but this video I'll have to do. We'll be going live again here shortly. We are finishing up on a few details with information that we got for Delphi. So we will be live here again soon. Thank you and have a good night.